Imagine standing on a mountain peak, the crisp air filling your lungs, the vast horizon stretching endlessly before you. You take a deep breath, feeling a sense of freedom, a sense of purpose. As you step forward, the wind, once a gentle ally guiding your path, suddenly shifts. What once carried you forward now resists your every move, pushing you back, challenging your progress. Life is much the same. There are moments when the very people who once supported us, our family, our closest friends, become the strongest voices of doubt. Those who once spoke our name with warmth and encouragement now greet us with skepticism, criticism, or even rejection. Why does this happen? Why does change, even when it comes from a place of wisdom and self-discovery, make others uncomfortable? Does their opposition mean we are on the wrong path? Or is it a test, a challenge meant to refine our understanding, strengthen our resolve, and teach us the art of stillness amidst the storm? Zen Buddhism teaches us a profound truth. A tree does not resist the wind, yet it stands tall. A river does not fight the stones, yet it carves its path through mountains. Resistance is not always about defiance. Sometimes, it is about learning to flow, to remain unshaken even as the world around us shifts. Today, we explore this lesson through the journey of a man who faced such a trial, a man who returned home seeking peace, only to be met with resistance. His story, like many of ours, is one of doubt, struggle, and ultimately, wisdom. Let me take you on this journey. The core issue: when family becomes opposition, we all long for acceptance, especially from those who raised us. We believe that if we grow wiser, calmer, and more understanding, our family will see our transformation as something beautiful. But what if, instead, they react with suspicion? This is what happened to the traveler in our story. After years of seeking wisdom, he returned home, expecting to be welcomed with open arms. Instead, he found his family distant, whispering among themselves. "You've changed," they told him. "You've abandoned us. Your pursuit of wisdom is foolishness." At first, he was hurt. He had believed that understanding leads to harmony, that peace within oneself would reflect peace in the world. But now, he faced judgment and rejection from those he loved most. His mother, who had once spoken to him with warmth, now looked at him with unease. His father, who had once encouraged him to seek knowledge, now questioned the value of his journey. Even his siblings, who had once admired his dedication, now saw him as a stranger. "What happened to you?" they asked. "Why do you no longer live as we do? Why do you speak of things that have no place in our home?" He had left seeking truth, hoping to return with wisdom to share. Instead, he felt like an outsider in his own home, sitting beneath an ancient pine tree. He closed his eyes and asked himself, "Why has my journey led to this?" Was his transformation truly a mistake? Had he strayed too far from the people he once called his own? Or was their rejection not about him at all, but about their own fears, fear of change, fear of the unknown, fear that his path had created a distance they could not cross? And so, the traveler found himself at a crossroads, not one of physical direction, but of the heart. Would he fight to be understood? Or would he embrace the path before him, even if it meant walking alone? The traveler's tale, returning to rejection. This traveler had spent years learning from wise teachers, meditating in solitude, and observing the world with quiet reverence. He had wandered through mountains where the wind carried the echoes of ancient wisdom, sat by rivers that whispered the impermanence of all things, and walked under endless skies where time itself seemed to dissolve. He had learned not just from words but from silence, not just from teachers but from the stillness of nature itself. He had mastered the art of stillness, learning to listen not to the noise of society, but to the whispers of existence itself. He had come to understand that true wisdom does not need to be spoken, it simply is. But when he returned home, the voices of his family were not whispers. They were loud. They were filled with doubt, fear, and frustration. "You have changed too much," his brother accused. "We do not know you anymore. You left seeking wisdom. But what has it given you?" his father asked. "You return with nothing, no wealth, no stability, no place among us." His mother, who had once cradled him as a child, now looked at him with sorrow. "Why have you abandoned the life we gave you?" she whispered. They accused him of forgetting his duties, of rejecting their traditions, of becoming someone they no longer recognized. The home he had longed for during his journey no longer felt like home. He had returned a wiser man, yet to them, he had become a stranger. This pain is familiar to many who walk the path of wisdom. You grow, but those around you remain where they were. Your journey makes them uncomfortable, not because they hate you, but because they fear what they do not understand. His silence unsettled them. His calm was mistaken for arrogance. His refusal to argue was seen as indifference. In their eyes, his journey had not led him forward. It had taken him away from them. But the traveler did not resent them. He saw their fear, their confusion, their longing for the familiarity of the past. He understood that when one person changes, the entire structure around them is forced to shift, and change, even when it is good, is often met with resistance. That night, as he sat alone beneath the stars, he realized a painful truth. The journey to wisdom is not only about seeking the truth, it is also about learning how to carry that truth when the world refuses to accept it. Understanding resistance. Why people fear change. A Zen master once said, "Do not be surprised when a pond ripples at the touch of a stone. Be surprised if it remains still." Change, even when it is personal, affects the world around us. The traveler realized that his family was not speaking against him out of hatred, but out of fear. Fear is a quiet force that hides beneath the surface of words, shaping the way people react to things they do not understand. His family had spent their lives following a familiar rhythm, working, surviving, adhering to traditions passed down for generations. To them, life was a path that had already been paved, and yet, he had stepped away from it. His father had spent years teaching him responsibility, expecting him to carry on the family's name. His mother had poured her love into raising him, hoping he would one day take his place among them. His siblings had grown alongside him, believing they were walking the same road together. But now, he had returned a different man. He had not followed the expected path. He had not accumulated wealth, nor had he settled down. His silence, his stillness, his wisdom, things he saw as valuable, were things they saw as unsettling. And so, their fear took the form of rejection. Fear that his journey meant abandoning them. Fear that his new wisdom made their lives seem small. Fear that if he walked a different path, their own choices might be wrong. It is a difficult thing to watch someone change before your eyes, especially when you do not understand the transformation. His family did not want to question their own beliefs. So instead, they questioned his. "You have gone too far," they said. "You think you are better than us now?" they accused. "Do you not care about the life we gave you?" they asked. But the traveler saw beyond their words. He saw the truth. They were not rejecting him. They were defending themselves from the discomfort of uncertainty. Realizing this, he did not respond with anger. He did not argue. Instead, he embraced the lesson. Opposition is not always a sign of error. Sometimes, it is simply a sign that the world is adjusting to your growth. The stronger the wind, the deeper the roots must grow. And so, he chose not to resist, but to stand firm, unmoved, like the ancient pine under which he now sat. The path of stillness, facing words without fighting. That evening, his family gathered and spoke against him again. Their voices were sharp, their words heavy with expectation. They demanded that he return to the way things were. They could not understand why he remained so different, why he had chosen a path that set him apart from them. "You have changed too much," his uncle muttered. "Your silence is not wisdom, it is arrogance," his brother accused. "You act as if you are above us," his cousin sneered. They mocked his stillness, mistaking it for indifference. They questioned his choices, demanding explanations, demanding justification. But he did not fight. He did not defend himself. He simply listened. There was a power in his silence, though no one could see it yet. He had learned that wisdom is not about proving others wrong. It is about understanding without the need to be understood. The room grew tense, thick with frustration. Finally, a younger member of his family, unable to contain his emotions, stood up and asked, "Do you not care what we think? Do you not respect your family?" The traveler turned toward him, his gaze soft, his expression gentle. He did not react with argument, nor did he try to correct them. Instead, he spoke with quiet certainty. A river does not abandon the mountain when it flows downward. It carries with it the wisdom of the heights. Some scoffed at his words, unwilling to hear their meaning. Others fell silent, sensing something in his presence they could not quite understand. But in that moment, the traveler felt no anger, no sadness, only peace. For he had realized a simple truth. You do not have to be understood to walk your path. You only have to be unwavering in it. The bamboo in the storm, strength through non-resistance. In the days that followed, his family continued to oppose him. They repeated their arguments, hoping to shake him, to make him see their way. They reminded him of his responsibilities, of the traditions he was leaving behind. They questioned why he refused to return to the life they had built for him. But something had changed. The traveler no longer felt wounded by their words. He did not carry their rejection as a burden. Instead, he saw their resistance for what it was, not an attack, but an expression of their own fears. He realized that their words were like the wind that passes through the bamboo, strong, persistent, but ultimately powerless to break that which knows how to bend. Zen teaches us that a rigid tree breaks in the storm, but the bamboo bends and survives. At first glance, a mighty oak seems stronger than a slender bamboo stalk. Its thick trunk stands tall, unyielding, but when the storm comes, the oak, unwilling to bend, cracks under the pressure. Meanwhile, the bamboo sways, moving with the wind rather than against it. When the storm passes, it still stands, unbroken. And so, the traveler chose to be like the bamboo. He did not resist his family's words. He did not try to force them to understand him. He did not argue or justify. Instead, he listened, allowing their voices to come and go like the passing wind. True strength is not found in resistance, but in flexibility. To fight would be to invite suffering. To prove them wrong would be to seek validation where none was needed. Instead, he let go of the need to be accepted, just as the bamboo lets go of its rigid form to survive the storm. And so, while his family's opposition remained, their power over him had disappeared. Seeds of understanding, the power of quiet conviction. As time passed, his family's opposition did not vanish overnight. They still spoke against his choices, still clung to their beliefs, still wondered why he had chosen a different path. But something was shifting. Their voices, once sharp with frustration, began to lose their edge. Some grew tired of speaking against him. They had expected him to argue, to defend, to justify himself, but he had done none of those things. And without resistance to push against, their own energy began to fade. Others, watching his unwavering peace, began to question their own judgments. How can he remain so calm? They wondered. Why does he not react with anger or hurt? If he is wrong, why does he not feel the need to fight back? And a few, in quiet moments, even approached him with curiosity rather than opposition. "What have you found that makes you so unshaken?" one asked. "Why do our words not disturb you?" another questioned. These were the moments he had been waiting for, not moments of victory, not moments of proving himself right, but moments where the seeds of understanding had begun to take root. He did not answer with long explanations. He did not try to convince them of anything. He simply spoke from his heart, sharing the peace he had found. The storm does not trouble the mountain. The river does not argue with the rocks in its path. They simply continue, unchanged. Without argument, without defense, without struggle, he had planted a seed of understanding. And just like all seeds, it would take time to grow. The final lesson, walking your path without looking back. Years later, as he prepared to continue his journey, an elder of his family approached him. His hair had grayed, his steps slower than before, but his eyes held something different, a quiet recognition, a reluctant respect. "We may not agree with your path," the elder said, "but we see that it has made you whole. Walk it well." For the first time, the traveler sensed not resistance, but acceptance, not full understanding, but the acknowledgement that his journey had not been in vain. And with that, the traveler bowed deeply, gratitude filling his heart, not because he had won them over, not because they now saw what he saw, but because he had walked his path without bitterness, without resentment, without the need for validation. He had learned the final lesson: when those you love speak against you, it is not always rejection. Sometimes, it is a test of your resolve, to see whether you will stay true to yourself even when the world does not support you. A test of your understanding, to recognize that opposition is often fear in disguise, not malice. A test of your ability to remain at peace despite the shifting winds of the world. And so, he walked forward. His heart is calm as a still pond. His spirit is free as the wind. He did not look back, not because he had turned away from his family, but because he no longer needed their approval to continue. He had found something far more precious, the kind of peace that comes from within, unshaken by the voices around him. For those who truly seek wisdom, the greatest journey is not across mountains or through distant lands. It is the path within. Reflection, the power of unshaken stillness. A wise master once said, "The moon does not argue with the clouds that cover it. It simply waits, knowing that in time, the sky will clear." When your family opposes you, when those closest to you question your choices, it is easy to feel wounded, to believe that their rejection means you have lost your place among them. But is it truly rejection? Or is it simply their own fear of change? Most people do not resist you because they wish you harm. They resist because your growth forces them to confront their own fears, the fear that their way of life is being challenged, the fear that they might not understand you anymore, the fear that your journey means leaving them behind. Opposition is not always personal. It is often a reflection of the fears of others. A river does not blame the rocks for being in its way. It simply flows around them, knowing they are part of the journey. The traveler in our story did not force his family to understand him. He did not demand approval. He simply continued, with quiet strength, without resentment. And in doing so, he embodied the greatest lesson of all. You do not need to be understood to be at peace. You only need to walk your path with stillness, with clarity, and without fear. Like the moon behind the clouds, your truth does not disappear just because others cannot see it yet. The ocean does not seek approval from the rivers that flow into it. It does not try to explain its depth or justify its vastness. It simply exists, unmoved, boundless, eternal. Likewise, you do not need to be understood. You only need to be true. Not everyone will see your journey as you do. Some will question, some will resist, and some may never understand. But that does not mean you are lost. It simply means you are walking a path that is uniquely yours. True wisdom does not argue. It does not seek validation. It simply shines, steady, unwavering, like the sun breaking through the morning mist. And in time, even those who doubted you, even those who resisted you, may one day stop and ask themselves, "What does this person know that I do not?" If this message spoke to you, subscribe for more wisdom. Share your thoughts in the comments, and walk your path with peace. Thank you for watching. Keep moving forward, without fear, without doubt, and without the need to look back.